Anyone who watches this program has often heard me say that Champions for CASA is the nonprofit auxiliary that supports the 8th Judicial Court CASA Las Vegas program here in Clark County. So today we've got Chief Judge Jerry Wiese to explain exactly what that means. And so for that, we turn to our guest, Chief Judge Wiese. How are you today?
Doing great. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciate you. So from your perspective, what is the overarching vision of the CASA program, and why is that vision so critical within the family court system?
Well, the vision of the CASA program is to have a CASA volunteer for every child that's in the foster program. CASAs or guardians ad litem are required by the statute and by federal law for every CASA, and since we have about 3,000 foster kids in the county, and we've never been able to meet our mandate because of the fact that we just don't have enough CASAs. We have 6 dependency judges that work with these kids in the dependency cases. Our goal is to have a CASA for every child, and we're doing our best to get there.
Yep. Well, things like this will help us, right? Educating the community, building awareness, and getting people inspired to become CASA volunteers.
And if we get a CASA volunteer for every child, it's much less likely that a child is going to slip through the cracks, because the court's going to be aware of every child and every child's situation.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So can you share how and why the CASA program was originally brought into the court system, and what need was it created to solve?
I believe it was started back in about 1977 in Seattle, Washington. They found a need to try to keep track of the kids that are in the foster program. By the late I think it was around 1980 or in the 80s, late Judge John Mendoza was able to get the CASA program started in Clark County, Nevada. Mm-hmm. Actually, I think he's the one that came up with the acronym CASA for Court-Appointed Special Advocates, and started the CASA program, which was later adopted by the National CASA. So Judge Mendoza solicited to help us some volunteers through the Junior League, and they became the first group of CASA volunteers, helping to keep track of our foster kids. And he wanted individuals who could spend quality time with kids to get to know them, so that we could find out what their problems are, find out what we can do to help them and help them through the system.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It's interesting. You're teaching me a little bit of history as we go along here too. So thank you so much for that. So over the years, how have you seen the CASA program change, grow, evolve?
Our goal has been over the years to get as many CASAs as we can, to try to get a CASA for every child that's in foster care. We've had grants, we've done fundraising, but we haven't really, the big growth hasn't happened until we were able to get some grants and fundraising just more recently, so that we could do some advertising. Now we're advertising in billboards and commercials and things like that, and we're letting people know that the CASA program is there. And we're getting more and more volunteers, so we're getting closer to having a CASA for every child, even though we're still a long ways from our goal.
Yeah. And are there any statistics or trends that you can share that might help us to illustrate the impact of having a CASA volunteer on a child?
I can tell you back in 2019, we had 285 CASA volunteers, 665 children were being handled. In 2023, we were up to 420 volunteers representing 926 children. In 2025, last year, we were up to 617 CASA volunteers, and they were representing 1,205 children. So we're getting closer and closer to our goal, even though, we still have, a lot of kids that are not represented by CASAs. Yeah. They serve a unique role. Our CASA volunteers serve a unique role, and they only handle or represent one or two kids at a time, so that they can give them personal, individualized time and care and get to know them. Studies have shown that children with CASA volunteers achieve permanency quicker, they're less likely to re-enter care, and they're more likely to succeed in school, those are all positives, right? Also, studies have shown that children's outcomes are much better if they have at least one committed adult in their life who they can depend on. Sometimes it's the CASA volunteer who's the person that, 20, 30 years down the road, they're the ones that these kids remember as being their champion.
Absolutely. It's exactly how we came up with both things. Champions for CASA and the Power of One podcast, right?
Well, that's what's important. We need to let these kids know that somebody cares about them, that we're there to make sure that the court knows what's the best for them.
And how do CASA volunteers help to do that?
As the CASA volunteers get to know the kids, they get to know what's best for the kid, right? In the situation, because they all have different situations. They all come from different situations. And I think by getting to know them, the better they get to know them, the child may want one thing and it may not be in their best interest. So that child's attorney may argue for what the child wants, but the CASA is going to come in and tell the judge what's going to be best for that child. Sometimes it's going to be what the child wants, sometimes not necessarily what the child wants, but I think if that happens in the way if it happens the way it's supposed to, years down the road, those children are going to be able to look back and say thank you to the CASAs that did what was best for them.
I'll tell you, that's the part that actually got me hooked in becoming a CASA volunteer myself, is when I realized that my role isn't to just go along with what's happening for these kids or what the rest of the team thinks is right, or as you said, what that child wants, but more about, if that were my kid or my relative, what would I think is in their best interest, right? And just taking that kind of common sense approach. Definitely what got to me, because I've seen it happen time and time again, where the kids that I represent, and I don't always see eye to eye in that, right?
Well, and when we do our graduations, every time there's a training for CASA volunteers, one of our judges brings up a story that that the CASA saved some kids' lives, had to travel out to the East Coast and bring these kids back and save their lives. And it's only because the CASAs are so close to them, they get to know them and they know what their problems and challenges are.
Yeah.
One of the things you asked about statistics too, in 2025, our CASA volunteers volunteered more than 4,500 hours of time and traveled over 135,000 miles to support their CASA children.
Wow,
so those are some cool numbers,
amazing.
Right?
Amazing. Yeah. I didn't drive that far.
Well, that's good.
But definitely very impactful. And that's it. I just, in talking to our CASA volunteers, we hear it all the time that we get to see firsthand the impact that we make on kids. And it's really heartwarming to hear as a volunteer from our judges, right? Because sometimes, especially when we first get started, it's scary to come into a courtroom, right?
Oh, I'm sure.
We're not trained. This isn't normal for us, right? We walk into a courtroom thinking, it's a little different. And to be embraced by our judges, we are so blessed here in Southern Nevada that our judges, respect the process and want us to be a part of it. And then to hear the statistics and to hear how much we've actually done and the impact we've had on kids is so fantastic.
Well, and it's nice because you got to understand, as a judge, we listen to two sides of a case generally. And you've got generally the prosecution or the state or the plaintiff, and then you've got the defense. In a case with an abused or neglected child, you have those two sides, but the CASA volunteer is the person that comes in and probably knows more about the child's situation than anybody else in the case. Even though both sides have attorneys, and attorneys always try to do what's the best thing for the community and for the individuals. But the CASA volunteer knows what's best for that individual child. And I think the judges pay particular attention to that because of the fact that we know the importance of the CASA program.
I'm so glad you get a chance to say that publicly to all our viewers, because that is one of the things that we hear commonly is, but I'm scared. I don't want to have to go into a courtroom, right? And to know that, we're supported and welcomed into that courtroom just makes it a little bit easier. So thank you so much for that. So, Judge, looking ahead, what kind of growth or expansion do you believe is most needed for the CASA program and to fully service the children that come into care?
Like I said, we have probably about 3,000 kids in foster care right now, and we're only servicing about 1,200 of them currently. So we have a lot of kids still that we want to be providing a CASA for. We just can't because of the numbers. So we're going to continue to advertise. We're going to do things like this podcast and try to make people aware. There's a lot of people out there that volunteer and a lot of people that are ready to volunteer, but they haven't found the right place yet. And I would suggest that this is the right place for everyone. To be a CASA volunteer, you're going to get that good feeling inside while you're going to help the community. You're going to help individual kids. There's no better place to spend your time volunteering if you're going to be a volunteer.
Absolutely.
So I mean, our attrition rate, we get a lot of CASA volunteers, but our attrition rate's still 15 or 20% a year. So even though we get a lot of volunteers, some of those people represent a kid or two, or maybe two or three or four, but then they're done. Some CASA volunteers stay for years and years and years, and that we love that. But we also appreciate those that come and stay for a short period of time. But because of that attrition rate, our recruiting needs to step up even that much more, and we need to get more and more volunteers in order to service the kids that we need to.
Yeah.
It's important also that our program that the state and the county continue to maintain funding for the staff, because we have to staff our CASA program so that we have the supervision and the resources to provide the training and the other thing that our CASA volunteers need. But we just need to continue to grow as much as we can.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's one of the reasons I know you just had an opportunity to tour the Connection Center that we recently opened here. That's now such a great resource for our volunteers and for the kids that we serve. And so, you know, that's one of the things we were listening to, what volunteers were telling us were some of the obstacles or, you know, reasons or barriers for them to either becoming a CASA volunteer or remaining a CASA volunteer. Right. And, you know, those came down to, you know, it's expensive to take kids out in the community. It can be hard to find places to go and find things to do with them. And so we really appreciate all the support that we've gotten from you, from the court system, from the community at large, in allowing us to open this center that gives our kids the opportunity to come into this home-like environment, to feel safe and comfortable, and to really bond with those CASA volunteers. Because I can tell you, as a volunteer, it's going to allow me to get to know those kids even better, right? And get to know what they need even more and become a much stronger advocate for them. So just interested if you have any thoughts or anything you'd like to share about what you've experienced today, getting to see the center and being here firsthand.
You know, just looking around, I can tell that you try to make it comfortable for the kids. And I think wherever the kids are in this Connection Center, they're going to be comfortable. And once they're comfortable, I think they're going to be more willing to share, right? And they need to be comfortable enough with their CASA volunteer that they're willing to share what their problems are, what their concerns are, what their dreams and goals are in life, so that their CASA volunteers can help them and help them be all that they can be.
Yes, absolutely. So last question for you. If I were to ask you the question, how do you think the community can help? What would you say?
As I said, the best thing that our community can do is to volunteer time. We need hundreds more volunteers. And if we can get the community to understand and know what the CASA program is, I think we get more volunteers, because it's not a program that anybody's going to look at and say that's not the volunteer program for me. Mm-hmm. I think once people realize what this program is and what it does and who it benefits, I think people will volunteer, and we just need to get the word out. The better we can get the word out, the more we can get the word out, the more volunteers we get, the more kids we're able to represent, and it works out better for everybody.
Yeah, no question. So we have a saying that we've adopted around the CASA program as well as Champions for CASA, and that's, you know, when your heart is ready and the time is right, that's when it's time to volunteer. And I know there are people out there watching today who are absolutely feeling that, hey, my heart's ready, and it just might be the right time for me. So let's encourage them to get involved and come and be a part of the work that we do. These kids need us desperately. And as Chief Judge Wiese said to us, you know, we need a lot more volunteers to serve the number of kids that we have in care. And we're looking for you to get involved and to help make a difference. So let's change a child's story. So thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
That